1st, 2022 Planning Commission hearing. I will call the hearing to order now. Ms. Fennessy, can we please have a roll call?
Thank you. Chair Escobedo is absent. Vice Chair Bonderson,
Here.
Commissioner Bauke,
Here.
Commissioner Higgins,
Here.
Commissioner Lodge,
Here.
Commissioner Wardlow,
Here.
and Commissioner Wiscombe.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Fennessy. And with that, let's move on to our preliminary matters. So let's start with requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, and ex-agenda items. Ms. DeBusk, do we have any?
Thank you, Chair Bonderson. We have none.
Thank you. Do we have any announcements or appeals?
Also none.
Thanks, Ms. DeBusk. We are now on item C, review, consideration, and action on the following draft Planning Commission minutes for November 10, 2022, and Planning Commission Resolution number 011-22 for 1218 Shoreline Drive, as well as Planning Commission minutes for November 17, 2022, and Planning Commission Resolution number 012-22 for 113 Harbor Way. I'll open this up to my fellow commissioners. Are there any Planning Commissioner comments for November 10th and Resolution number 011-22? I don't see any. Are there any public speaker comments for any of the minutes or resolutions, Ms. Fennessy?
Thank you. We did not receive any speaker slips, and there is no remote public commenters.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for November 10th and Resolution number 011-22? I see Commissioner Wiscombe's light on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the November 10th, 2022 Planning Commission minutes and the accompanying resolution.
Thank you, Commissioner Wiscombe. I see Commissioner Lodge. Would you like to second the motion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shall we do a roll call vote? Ms. Fennessy?
Thank you. I'll start with Commissioner Higgins,
Abstain.
Commissioner Lodge,
Yes.
Commissioner Wardlow,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiscombe,
Yes.
Commissioner Bauke,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Bonderson.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Let's move on to any planner commissioner comments for November 17, resolution number 011-22. Commissioners, any comments? I don't see any lights on, so we'll move on. Ms. Fennessy, any public speaker comments for the minutes or the resolution?
Thank you. I did not receive any speaker slips, and we do not have any remote public comments.
Excellent, thank you. So do we have a motion for November 17 and resolution number 012-22? And I see the light on for, that is Commissioner Wiscombe.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I move to approve the minutes for November 17th, 2022 and the accompanying resolution.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Lodge, thank you. Roll call vote, please, Ms. Fennessy?
Thank you. I'll start with Commissioner Lodge,
Yes.
Commissioner Wardlow,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiscombe,
Yes.
Commissioner Bauke,
Yes.
Commissioner Higgins,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Bonderson.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Fennessy. So this takes us to comments from members of the public pertaining to items that are not on today's agenda. Do we have any speaker slips or remote requests? Ms. Fennessy?
Thank you. I do not have any speaker slips, and if you would like to make a remote public comment, please follow the Zoom instructions on your screen. And we did receive one letter of correspondence that was distributed to the board prior to this meeting. And I do not see any hands raised, so I'll hand it back to the commission.
Thank you, Ms. Fennessy. So at this point, I will go ahead and close the general public comment, and we will move on to item number 3. This is for a project located at 540 West Pueblo Street and 521 West Junipero Street. We have City Planner Ms. Kathleen Kennedy here to give the staff presentation. Ms. Kennedy, the floor is yours. Are you ready?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Bonderson. My name is Kathy Kennedy, project planner with the city. As you said, this is a new project at 540 West Pueblo and 521 West Junipero Street. It's the Cancer Center of Santa Barbara project. So here's the project site aerial photo. So the project site's located between West Pueblo Street and extends all the way to West Junipero Street. It's surrounded by Oak Park here to the left, a number of medical buildings, some housing on West Pueblo Street. Also, the Oaks Parent-Child Workshop is located directly adjacent to the site between Mission Creek, which goes along here, and the Parent-Child Workshop is located right here. So there was an approved project back in 2010. It was approved by the Planning Commission, and at that time it included the merger of 10 lots. There were essentially 5 lots up top here, 3 on the bottom on West Pueblo, and then 2 larger lots, and those are all merged together to create this one lot and one facility. It included the demolition of a number of buildings and small sheds and such, and also the relocation of a couple of residential units. Then the construction of a new cancer center building here with the healing garden, with a very extensive creek restoration that occurred next to the creek, and there's actually more than 50 feet from the existing creek. There's a very large setback. And then 180 space parking structure was created. And then along West Junipero Street, on the far left is a commercial building used by the Cancer Center. The next building over here is the Wolf Education Center. And next to that is a newly rehabilitated duplex, residential duplex. The next one over was proposed to be the new duplex, new residential duplex that we'll talk about. That was not constructed. And then further to the right is another residential duplex that was recently renovated and rehabilitated. So this project involves some changes to the approved project. These are in these 3 locations. We have the new addition to the main Cancer Center building down here in the lower left in this general vicinity. Have some additional bike parking right here, and then this change from the approved residential duplex to a parking lot. So this is the proposed project. Again, the addition is shown here next to the existing Cancer Center building, and what they're doing is they're requesting approval of another linear accelerator. So you can see, and we'll have a floor plan of this later, there are 2 linear accelerators currently, and the request is to add an additional one here, and then some additional office space. And then moving into the parking structure, some additional bike parking is proposed here, and then up above on Junipero Street is the proposed parking lot, which would replace that residential duplex that I talked about. So the discretionary decisions before you today are the approval of the addendum to the mitigated negative declaration, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Approval of an amendment to an approved project to eliminate the residential duplex and construct a new parking lot. So these changes are significant enough that we decided not to have this fall under the substantial conformance determination, and that we instead would call this an amendment to their approved project. And then approval of a development plan for construction of 1,614 square feet of net new non-residential development from the community benefit category. And this project went to City Council to be designated as a community benefit project, and therefore they're eligible to request this square footage. Here's the proposed floor plan for the addition. So you can see where there's another 3rd accelerator here in this upper area, and then additional office space to accompany that. Then we have the parking lot to replace the duplex. There are 6 proposed parking spaces in this area. The addition requires the addition to the building requires additional parking. It requires 6 spaces, so the Cancer Center thought it would be more important to provide the parking rather than the housing. and more important, to provide that new third accelerator to the project. In this area, they could be used as residential spaces. The residential spaces were originally to be included in the parking structure, but the applicant could, if they choose to, since they're right in between the two residential duplexes, use these as residential spaces. The project did go to ABR for design review. ABR stated that they were in support of the proposed addition and the landscaping for the proposed parking lot, and that they'd be able to make the required project compatibility findings when the project does return to them for project design and final approvals. So the previous project that was approved had a mitigated negative declaration prepared for the project that was also approved. There are a list of potentially significant impacts that were reduced with the mitigation measures. These related to air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, hazards, noise, and public services. And the MMRP for that project is attached to your staff report. And when we looked at this new change to the project, we looked through the mitigation measures to determine which ones would be appropriate to apply to this particular project, which is, of course, much smaller than the original project. And we've added air quality conditions 2 through 26 related to dust control, the bird nest protection mitigation measure, the oak tree protection measure. There is an oak tree in the area of the new parking lot that needs to be protected, and then also the temporary construction wall to prevent some noise spilling out over onto the parent-child workshop that is next door. The plans do not show the construction wall. Those will be shown in construction drawings later, but anticipate it to be located around the addition area, between the addition and that use at the parent-child workshop. Also, it's brought to my attention that perhaps we could add N1, the noise condition mitigation measure related to interior noise, and I would agree with that can be applied to this project as well. So when you make your motion, you could, if you agree, you could also include N1 to this project to be added as a condition of approval. So there are findings to be made in regard to the mitigated negative declaration in the development plan. So I've just provided a summary here, but they are in detail in your staff report. We've determined that no subsequent mitigated negative declarations required for this project because there are no new significant environmental effects. There's no increase in the severity of previously identified effects. There's no substantial changes in the circumstances in regard to the project. No new information that shows any significant effects not already discussed in the previous MND, or that significant effects will be more severe. And there's nothing to necessitate new or revised mitigation measures. And a summary of the development plan findings, that the project complies with all applicable provisions of the zoning ordinance, consistent with the principles of sound community planning, will not have a significant adverse impact upon the community's aesthetics or character, and will be compatible with the neighborhood. And is also consistent with the policies of the traffic management strategy in relation to the community benefit square footage that's allowed for this part of town. Therefore, our staff recommendation is to approve the addendum to the MND, approve the amendment to the approved project to eliminate the residential duplex and construct a new parking lot, approve the development plan for 1,614 square feet of net new residential development from the community benefit category, making the findings in the staff report, and then subject to the conditions of approval with the addition of the N1 noise reduction mitigation measure as well. And that concludes staff's presentation. We also have Michelle Bedard from Transportation Planning here, if you have any questions for her.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Kennedy.
you.
Now we will hear from the applicant. Welcome. Mr. Cornell, you will have
Madam
15
Chair.
minutes to present. Please go ahead and state your full name and the relationship to the project for the record, and go ahead and begin.
Okay, my name is Brian Cornell. I am the architect. With me is Jonathan Leach from Dudek, our environmental planner. And I think we can go through these quickly, Kathy, and since you've done such a thorough job, but I've just got photos of the existing condition, which we'll just run through. I won't say next for each one. You can just go through them, and if any of you would like to stop, we can take a look, but this is all the existing condition, the existing building, the Wolf Education Center on Junipero. The remodeled, before it was remodeled, Victorian. This is the spot where the parking lot would be. You can see the oak trees in this image. And then that remodeled old 40s bungalow with a duplex behind. This is where the existing crosswalk is. That crosswalk is going to have to be relocated because of the entrance to the parking lot, so it's going to move to the other side of, what is it? Whatever street it is there, yeah, sorry. So it will be here. And Oak Park across the street. Go ahead through this. I think, Kathy, you've shown the plans pretty significantly. That's the new condition. We do have a blow up of the parking area, so I think the plans you may have had, we've revised it a little bit, but up in the, that is new bike parking, and then we've got secure residential parking right there, those 4 spaces. And then this is the landscape plan. So Arcadia helped us on this. They were the original landscape architect. Next slide, I think, is a blow-up of the Healing Garden condition and how that is going to be revamped. And you can see we've got extensive trees that are being planted in front of that new vault. And then the landscaping that is around the new parking lot. This is just a floor plan showing the details. We're basically punching through the building, the 3-story portion of the building. You can see these linear accelerators are surrounded by a boatload of concrete. And so it's really just a simple extrusion of the same space for the new linear accelerator, and then some adjacent offices in addition to that, and then that provides access through the building. So this is the proposal you can see right there. We're treating the linear accelerator the same way we are the others, to be sort of basically a very simple, elegant concrete finish. And then we're matching the sandstone for the office addition at the lower scale. Just a little bit further back from the street. The building is actually, our street grid, of course, is off at 45 degrees, so this building is actually oriented on a due north axis. That's the Healing Garden and the stone. I had mentioned in the site visit, one of the members of the ABR was very concerned and wanted to be sure that we use the same stonemason and the same quarry for this sandstone, because it really is very beautiful. And I think that's it. These are elevations if you want to refer to them, and Jonathan and I will be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cornell. You do have about 10 and a half minutes left if you choose to use them, if we have any public commenters that you may need
Okay.
to respond to.
Great, thank you.
So I will go back to Ms. Fennessy. Do we have any comments from members of the public at this time?
Thank you. I did not receive any speaker slips. If you would like to make a remote public comment, please use the raise hand icon, and I will call on you. We have one remote public commenter, Steve Johnson, and I will allow you to speak when you are ready.
Give me just a moment. I'm going to set the timer for 2 minutes. And,
Oh,
Ms. Fennessy, you're going to set the timer for Mr. Johnson? Shall I? I can do it too. Yes, let's do that together. Well, I am ready, so let's go ahead and get started. Mr. Johnson?
Could I confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'd like to note that one of the two houses that were to be relocated back with the original project, it was either 524 or 526 Nipro, was relocated to 521 West Figueroa, where it has sat in a dilapidated condition and is eyesore the last 6 years. So that represents some loss of housing. It was additionally placed on a lot that could easily be developed with much more housing. And the fact that a special structure was placed there further contributed to loss of housing. Now there's a proposal to remove another 2 units of residential housing. I just don't think that makes sense with the current demand for housing in the city. And there are obvious alternatives. One could create a podium over the proposed new parking area and place housing there. There's a very tall parking structure on the property. Build another tall structure that provides housing. So I hope the planning commission would give consideration to those ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Fennessy, any other comments at this time?
Thank you. I do not see any hands raised, but we did receive one letter of correspondence from Stephen Johnson, and that was distributed to the Planning Commission prior to this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Fennessy. So at this point, I can go ahead and turn over to my fellow planning commissioners for comment, or for questions. I see Commissioner Lodge. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bonderson. I too wondered about the reduction in the amount of housing that is being provided, and also wondered if you couldn't have come up with a plan that had both parking and housing units.
Thank you, Chair Bonderson, Commissioner Lodge. You know, Cancer Center has been suffering from a glut, for lack of a better word, of patients requiring radiation oncology, and so they've been contemplating this vault addition for the last couple of years. The reality is they have limited resources, and their number one objective is to treat cancer patients. So building the housing is a very expensive proposition for Cancer Center Foundation, who owns the land. And they feel that it is just money that they do not have right now to spend on that housing. So, I'm a housing advocate, so it is unfortunate to lose those potential too. I have to say, in Mr. Johnson's comments, I'm unaware of, the relocation was something of that, one of those structures that was advertised. So someone came and got it and moved it, and so I don't think we are responsible for that, but it's unfortunate. Nevertheless, it really was just a hard choice that Cancer Center had to make, and they prioritized the vault over the housing. They also, in the process, have realized that there are times when that parking structure is full, and as you know, the project was approved with the residential parking in the parking structure. So this solution will at least alleviate that impact as far as allowing the residents to park on this surface lot and free up the spaces in the parking structure. So it's unfortunate, but that's, I think, their financial reality.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cornell.
Thank you, Commissioner Lodge. Next, we have Commissioner Bauke.
Madam Chair, I've got two questions, one for staff and one for the applicant. To Ms. Kennedy, could you tell us if there was a condition about this relocated house that actually is operative under the prior approvals? I'm trying to understand if it got just sort of lost. Sometimes that happens on historic structures. There's conditions for them to be dealt with, and they tend to get moved around, and sometimes they just get dilapidated, never happen. So I was wondering if there was an obligation to address the rehabilitation of that structure that the public speaker mentioned. Could you address that?
Yes, Commissioner Bauke. The original project had conditions of approval to make sure that these are offered for relocation. They put ads in the paper, and they followed through with everything that was required to be done at that time. They had someone who was interested in it and did move the two units off-site, moved to the site on Figueroa Street. So that did, so the Cancer Center did satisfy their condition of approval. So my understanding is a permit was sought for that new location and that the permit has expired. And I don't think there's been much follow-up on that, so I will do that. But I do recall going out to the site originally when they were relocated there and talked about what was going to happen and how they would be rehabilitated. So, but it's unfortunate that the new owner has not followed through, so we can look into that for sure.
But the center has met its obligation under.
Yes,
Okay, that's-
absolutely.
That was my first question. The other question is to probably Mr. Leach, actually. Could you walk us through the creek setback for this project and where that line falls versus where your project? I mean, that was raised, I think, by one of the public commenters.
Before you answer, would you just present your name and your relationship to the project for record?
I absolutely will. I was going to do that, but thank you for the reminder. Jonathan Leach, I'm with Dudek. We were the environmental consultant and land use planner for the original project back in 2008, 2010, and were also invited to assist the Cancer Center with this new revised project.
Thank you.
The creek setback is kind of undulating. It's an average. The creeks wanted a minimum of 50 feet from the top of the bank of the creek for any hardscape development. And as it turned out, because the creek curves and the area next to it was ideal for doing a series of landscaping that would provide natural filtration before the water got into the creek. There's definitely let's see.
This is the 50-foot right here.
That's exactly what I was, there we go. Yeah, so the 50-foot setback is indicated where Kathy just moved the little hand. You can see that the structural development is quite a bit farther away from that. And then the area that is the meditation garden is completely addressed through a stormwater treatment program. So all of that water is collected and treated before it's released. And if we go, Kathy, can you put the floor plan up that has a little more detail for the addition?
While she's doing that, if I may add, the excessive setback is the result of the original Cancer Center, which was a remodeled building, had to remain in place while the new Cancer Center was built. So we were literally within 3 feet building the new building next to the old Cancer Center, and then when it was demolished, it resulted in that excessive setback.
Okay. And then from a technical standpoint, I just wanted to really quickly cover, the new additional vault is designed to completely leverage all of that lead and concrete barrier that's around the existing pair of vaults. So rather than having to build 4 reinforced, very thick concrete with lead lining, all we had to do was the 3, and that minimized the amount of expense that was associated with this, and also meant that had we tried to do this as part of the existing floor space elsewhere in the building, it would have been entirely much more costly. So the Cancer Center has done everything possible to use the resources that they have, as Brian indicated, to focus on their mission, cancer treatment, and unfortunately, the money just, and they also found out in the process of renovating those 2 duplexes, that turned out to be far more expensive than they had originally anticipated. So bringing those back online as really high high-quality housing for their employees was what they wanted to focus on.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner Balke. Next, we have Commissioner Higgins.
Yeah, question for staff. Excuse me. The no net loss of housing units concept and is inapplicable here. Is that because the units were never constructed, or at least the two that we're talking about losing? So just these new state laws about no net loss, they apply to units that are on the ground, not approved and not built, correct? Is that basically right?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. Next, we have Commissioner Wiscombe, please.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Couple questions. In the conditions of approval, talks about a temporary construction wall. Mitigation measure describes this as in around the construction site. So are we doing a wall, and where is it?
Chair Bonderson, Commissioner Wiscombe, yes, we're going to do a wall just exactly like we did the wall for the original construction. So we basically, if you'll go to the site plan again, Kathy, we built that wall just off of the property line surrounding the child care center. So it would basically ensconced it. So you can see where the property line is. Basically, that's where that wall will be located, right? Yeah, so it'll wrap around the building like that.
Okay, so it's around the construction site, it's really
It's
protecting
just-
the child care center.
It's just to
from-
protect the child care from that construction noise. That's
Okay.
right.
Wonder if we need to make that clearer, but, okay, great. And then, thank you, Mr. Cornell, I think that's all I have for you. And Ms. Bedard, I wanted to ask about bicycle parking. Is transportation satisfied with the placement of the bicycle parking where it's proposed?
Thank you, Vice Chair Bonderson and Commissioner Wiscombe. Yes, we have looked at that and worked with the applicant beforehand. We initially had discussed maybe potentially providing an alternate location for the residential bicycle parking, not in the existing parking garage, to have more of a separation. But the applicant had a good, valid point regarding adding additional cost to the structure, having to create a new covered structure for residential bicycle parking. So the swap of the covered non-residential and then allowing the residential parking to be covered within a secured fence in the garage is acceptable.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I think when we had the site visit, I think there was talk of maybe losing 1 or 2 spaces in the parking garage. Is that right? Because of the bicycle parking?
Commissioner Wiscombe, yes, the existing, you saw that chain link fence area
Yes.
that had basically lined up bike parking, but to meet the standards for the residential parking, bike parking and the clearances and whatnot, we have to relocate a couple of those just to make that work. And so this actually is the older plan. It's not showing it. I think our plan may show the new configuration, but basically we are creating a separation. So that chain link fence area that is for the commercial bike parking is going to reduce in size. We're going to do new chain link fence for the residential bike parking. They'll each have separate gates or doors. And then we're putting the additional parking out where that little pad was for motorcycles.
Okay, so there's no net loss?
I think we actually gain bike parking in the process.
Okay, gain bike parking, and, but are we losing car parking?
No,
No, okay.
No.
Because I thought it was said on site that we might have to lose a couple parking spaces.
no. We are, that pad was sort of dedicated to moped and motorcycle
That's
parking.
right, yes.
But it's not really utilized and it'll still function. We moved, in the scheme I showed it, we moved it over to the left as Kathy's indicating, so there'll still be a good amount of room for motorcycles to park.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Cornell. I appreciate the clarification on that. And then this is for Ms. DeBusk, I guess, under conditions of approval, are we able to add a condition to, this would be, I think, on page 9 of 12 of the C of A. It's number 34, construction parking. Are we able to add a section that basically says on-street parking of vehicles associated with construction is strictly prohibited? May we add that to the C of A if my fellow commissioners agree? It's a very parking challenged area, so.
Can you repeat that condition?
Yes.
For the-
What I wrote down, I mean, you can word it, I know Ms. DeBusk is getting good at wording these, but I wrote, on-street parking of vehicles associated with construction is strictly prohibited.
Thank you, Commissioner Wiscombe. We do have an existing condition of approval, number 34, that says during construction, free parking spaces for construction workers shall be provided on-site or off-site in a location subject to the approval of the Public Works Director. So would your intent be to go further?
Yes.
And to say?
Yes, my intent is to go further because it is such a parking challenged area, so.
Yes, that was certainly a condition that you can add
Okay.
at your discretion.
Okay, and then, thank you for that, Ms. DeBusk. Ms. Kennedy, in the, what are we calling it? The addendum to the mitigated negative declaration, you talked about adding N1. And so the addendum would just be altered to reflect the addition of N1, right?
And then we would add it to the conditions of approval as well,
Oh, okay.
because all of the mitigation measures that we are applying to this project have been included in the new set of conditions, so we'll add
Okay,
it to
and
that.
so where would it go in the C of A? Do you,
We'll find a place, but I think it's under the
okay,
construction-related.
okay. I just wondered if you
implementation
had
part.
one now. Okay, so if everyone agrees to that, we not only have to amend the addendum to the MND, but we have to amend the C of A to include N1. Right? Okay, okay. Okay, and I think that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Wiscombe. Lastly, we have Commissioner Wardlow.
Thank you very much. One question. And I apologize if this was already discussed, but for the applicant. Understanding the public comment and a lot of our concerns around affordable housing, just out of curiosity, did you guys work or attempt to work with the Housing Authority or talk with any other potential like public-private partnerships to work through the needs of potentially being able to do the actual apartments?
No, we did not. I confess, because it just really, again, it was a matter of cost. The only way to put housing on this site would be, as the public speaker mentioned, to build a podium, to build that housing above this parking. And certainly that would be feasible, but not economically feasible for Cancer Center. But no, we did not talk to the Housing Authority.
Okay. And the parking requirement is regardless of the expansion that's happening, it's not just required because of the expansion, right? The need for the additional 6.
Well, no, technically, from a pure zoning standpoint, we would need these additional 6 parking spaces for the expansion of the vault, and that's even considering a lower parking ratio for the vault itself. I think we decided on a 1 per 1,000, 1 space per 1,000 square foot for that, and then 1 per 250 for the office. The building exceeds 50,000 square feet, and there's a reduction that's allowed for buildings in excess of that. We probably could have pared the actual requirement down to 4. And honestly, we could have probably done a demand study and determined that it did in fact meet the parking demand, the 180 spaces, and not put in the parking. But for Cancer Center, I think and that would have been a modification. I think for Cancer Center, they realized they really could use the parking, honestly, and so it made sense to put it there. And I should mention a follow-up to Commissioner Wiscom's comments. I think our desire is that we use, just as it was during the construction of Cancer Center, that little parking lot will be the construction parking on-site interim while the vault is being built, and then it would be the last thing completed as part of the project.
Thank you so much for very comprehensively answering my question.
Sure.
That was perfect. That was really all the points I was wondering about. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Wardlow. And I actually already was able to answer my questions prior to the hearing, so I have no questions to add. But before I close the question period, I'll just look down the row here, and does anyone have any other questions? No, it doesn't look like it. So before I open up the floor for deliberations, I'd like to take a moment to review what we would like to cover here today. I understand, Ms. Kennedy, you have a slide to help keep us on track, and I'll have you load that up. And while she pulls that up, I'd like to just remind my fellow commissioners that the Planning Commission discretionary decision required for this project today is A, approval of the addendum of the mitigated negative declaration, B, approval of an amendment to the approved project, and C, approval of a development plan. That list can be found on page 1 of 91. And staff recommendation is now up on our screen to help guide us. Would you mind putting the findings up there? Yeah, that might help us as well. And we can have each commissioner ask if they want you to flip back and forth. Who would like to go first? Commissioner Higgins, please go ahead.
Yep, I can support the project as submitted and how staff has the findings written up. I don't want to encumber the project with an added parking restriction. I think that if we do that or start doing that, we kind of creep into a de facto ordinance amendment that all projects where there's parking constrained areas need to do something different, and I just think our ordinance is fine as it is, and I don't want to create an undue burden on contractors down there. That neighborhood has been under construction with a variety of things for decades, so I think it's unnecessary.
Thank you. Next, we have Commissioner Wiscom, please.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Well, I can certainly support the findings and support the addendum to the mitigated negative declaration with the addition of N1 and adding N1 to the conditions of approval, and support the amendment to an approved project, and also support the development plan for the net new non-residential development. I think this is a worthy project. I was very pleased to see the increase in use with the extra linear accelerator. And I think it's something that really serves our community well. And so far, the project is very impressive. It's been designed well, and I know that will definitely continue. So I'd like to see the added condition to the construction parking. We've done it on several projects lately. They've been more residential projects, but that area is highly impacted. It's hard to park there, and I just think making sure that anyone that's associated with the construction is keeping their vehicle off the street, just helps an already impacted area. But other than that, I'm definitely on board to make the approvals, make the findings in the staff report, and subject to the conditions of approval with a couple of amendments. Thank you.
Commissioners, anybody want to go next? Commissioner Wardlow, go ahead. Your mic's not on.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bonderson. I am supportive of this project. I appreciate the work that went into this, and as very often, I appreciate the amendments provided by Commissioner Wiscombe in terms of the parking. So, thank you.
Commissioner Bauke, please.
In the brevity of time, Chair, I would just ditto Commissioner Wiscombe's comments. Pretty much what she said is everything I would have said. It's a great project, and it's definitely a community benefit. And all the questions I had were either answered here or on the site visit. And thank you to the applicant and staff for a very good job.
Commissioner Lodge?
I concur with the positive comments.
Thank you. And I also find the project to be well thought out, especially the addition. I think it's a beautiful design, especially all the hard work, I think, put into the idea of maintaining that sandstone material. It doesn't look like an addition, at least there on paper. I also feel like this type of project embodies the true meaning of serving our community. I don't think there's anyone out there that hasn't been affected by cancer or knows somebody closely that's affected by cancer. And therefore, when you have to have a space to go through that experience, we're very lucky to have a beautiful space like that here in Santa Barbara. And everything about this cancer center has been thought through with love. I think it's very clear, especially when we walk through the site. And I'm really pleased to see this type of addition being proposed here today. I can support the project, the findings, the approvals, and I agree with Commissioner Wiscombe's added language about the construction vehicles. So with that, I will ask if anyone would like to make a motion. Would you like to add something, Commissioner Wiscombe?
Yes, Madam Vice Chair. I just want to add that I'd just like to thank staff. I thought the staff report, it's a highly complicated project because it's gone through iterations and different conditions of approval, and I thought the staff report was excellent. And I appreciate Ms. Bedard being here also for any questions on transportation. And I appreciated you being at the site visit too. So with that, I'm happy to approve the addendum to the mitigated negative declaration with the addition of N1 and the addition of N1 to the conditions of approval where staff feels is the best location. Approve the amendment to an approved project to eliminate the residential duplex and construct a new parking lot. Approve the development plan for the 1,614 square feet of net new non-residential development. Make the findings in the staff report. They are on page 9 of the staff report or page 9 of 91 in our documents. A, environmental review, and B, development plan. And subject to the conditions of approval with also, in addition to the N1 condition, the on-street parking restriction condition, where staff feels it's appropriate to place that.
I'll second the motion.
Just a moment. Thank you, Commissioner Wiscombe. Commissioner Higgins had his light on next. Would you like to pass it on, or did you have a comment? Did you want to add a comment before we finish the motion?
For staff?
First? Okay, just a moment.
Second.
Hold on, everybody, slow down. I'm going to accept Commissioner Lodge's second, It was timely, but now that we have the motion, can we wait a moment and accept Commissioner Higgins' question here? Okay, so we can discuss, and I'll start with Commissioner Higgins.
Yes, for staff, on the restriction that there's no right-of-way parking during construction, is that common? I don't believe we've actually done that with a lot of projects, and regardless of whether or not it's common, how is that going to work with enforcement?
It is common that we don't allow that. We only allow it with Public Works Director approval. So we have a condition in there
Allow
already.
what?
On-street parking in certain areas.
So it's common that on-street parking for construction is only allowed when the Public Works Director grants it?
Correct.
And when has the Public Works Director never granted it? Do you know?
I'm not aware. I think it's been, they have and haven't, depending on the location.
Got it. In terms
throughout
of
the city.
enforcement, do you enforce on this ever?
Commissioner Higgins, I do not know how it's enforced. It would generally, like the rest of conditions, would be on a complaint basis.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I don't currently have any other lights on, but I will open this up for any other discussion prior to taking a roll call vote. No one? Ms. Fennessy?
Thank you. I'll go ahead and start with Commissioner Wardlow.
Yes.
Commissioner Wiscombe,
Yes.
Commissioner Bauke,
Yes.
Commissioner Higgins,
I'm going to vote no out of protest on the condition, but you have a great project, so don't hold it against me.
Commissioner Lodge,
Yes.
and Chair Bonderson.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 5 to 1. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Fennessy.
Something told me you had the votes.
Absolutely. And before we go on, whenever we have a commissioner who disagrees, we ask you to elaborate for the record. So, Commissioner Higgins, please go ahead.
I've already elaborated. It's all good. Thank you.
Ms. DeBusk, is it clear? Okay, thank you. We'll go on. This decision is appealable within 10 calendar days. And that concludes item 3. Thank you to Mr. Leach, and thank you to Mr. Cornell for being here today. All right, so now we will continue with committee and liaison reports, and we will start with the staff hearing officer liaison. Is there anything to report today, Commissioner Higgins?
Only 2 cancellations, the last 2 hearing opportunities, so nothing to report.
Thank you. Any other liaison or committee reports at this time? Commissioner Lodge, please.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bonderson. Yesterday, November 30th, the Single Family Design Board reviewed a project at 1509 Shoreline. It's a bluff-top project where there's an existing house which is to be demolished and a considerably larger one to be made. Replace it, and it will require a coastal development permit, so it will be coming to the Planning Commission. This one has what they call a glorietta that was built years ago. Wouldn't be allowed these days, but it is below the bluff, down the bluff face, and there are considerable issues about how to make it less noticeable without destabilizing the bluff. So there was considerable discussion about that, but we'll be seeing it.
What was that element?
Glorietta.
And can you educate me on? I'm not familiar with that term.
I needed education too. It's a 2-story structure with a flat roof. The roof is on the same level as the top of the bluff. So you walk out from the house to some landscaping to this rooftop. And then below that, there are these 2 levels set into the bluff with lots of caissons into the bluff supporting it.
And before we conclude, would you remind us of the address of that so we can keep our eyes open?
Yes, it was 1509 Shoreline.
Thank you. Any other reports today?
I have one.
Commissioner Bauke, please.
Just wanted to bring to the attention of the public and my fellow commissioners that the Objective Design Standards Work Group is having a public meeting on Zoom on December 6th between 1 and 2:30, and information can be found on the city's website.
Thank you. And if there are no other reports, I am going to just quickly bring everyone's attention to an update. You may have received an email. It's been well advertised and publicized, but the State Street Advisory Committee is putting forward a community design workshop for the State Street Master Plan, and we have a few dates here in December. For the first item, there are 3 dates for the community design workshops. The first one is December 9th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. The second is December 9th from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. The third one is December 10th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And this design workshop is open to all community members. No RSVP is required. Participants are encouraged to stay for the duration of the workshop, although it's not required. And childcare will also be available for families with children ages 1.5 and older that may be participating in this event. So they're making it as easy to attend as possible. We're hoping to have as much turnout as we can encourage. The other event is a community open house, and that is on December 10th from 1 to 4 p.m. And all community members are invited to this open house. Members of the public can stop by any time and stay for as long as they would like to view the workshop posters, review existing conditions, and participate in a variation of workshop activities. Thank you. 821 State Street. Thank you for that question. And if there is nothing else to add, I will go ahead and conclude this Planning Commission hearing. It is 1:59 p.m., and I thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your day.